Welcome back to the Broken Brain. This is your Monday mental tip for today, which is, in fact, Monday. Doing all right already this week. Little thoughts today about finding a barometer for our emotional well-being, particularly going through a shorter-term depressive or anxious episode. You can apply this to longer as well, but what is a barometer? It's not a bar-o-meter. That's I assume, a meter that you would have for the popularity of different bars, and you would raise or lower it by applause on some kind of a game show, maybe? Last bar of the best bar, something like that. Raise the bar. There we go. It was right there, everybody. That's the name of the new show. Well, according to Oxford Language Dictionary, a barometer is a noun that is refers to an instrument measuring atmospheric pressure, usually especially in forecasting the weather and determining altitude. Or, second definition, same as the first, but not that much the same. Something which reflects changes in circumstances or opinions. That would be the way I'm using it actually now, which is more metaphorical, so it's not the same. You got to push ahead and read before you record, everyone. That's another tip. That one's for no charge. But getting back to our main tip, which also is available at no charge because you're listening to it for free right now, what is a barometer for our own emotional and mental health or well-being? Well, I think it's subjective, actually, like so many things. If you hear that something's objective, always, question a little bit. If it's subjective to something, then it's probably, useful because certain things depend. In this case, it depends on the person. And it depends on the normal. Now, when I say normal, we're using that mathematically. What is the norm that is usually the case? So a barometer for our emotional well-being could be one of a bunch of different things. It usually implies, in the way I'm using it, is that it usually would imply a way to measure if I'm having a hard time. First of all, do you know if you're having a hard time? Sometimes, and then sometimes not really. Sometimes we just think we're in a funk, but we're in a bigger than a funk, or sometimes we are in a funk and we don't know why. And sometimes we don't realize we're experiencing something emotional until something else happens. You ever looking for something that you lost, and then, you get a little more frantic and a little more irritable? You ever slam a cabinet door when something was going on and you didn't realize you were quite that stressed? Those types of things. You ever get irritable because everybody's being 10 times more obnoxious than they usually are, and then you discover that nobody else is under the impression that anyone's being more obnoxious than they are. You're just feeling a little hyper-aware, maybe, or something's going on. And some of those things can be barometers. If I find that I get more irritable, if I find that I slam doors and stuff when I'm feeling, when I'm in a rough place, those can be barometers. A couple other suggestions or examples. Some people find that when their level of physical activity drops, that is a good barometer for where they're at. Some people notice that if they don't pay attention to the mailbox or to their email inbox, and it grows from, I think most of us have 0 active emails because we clean it up so much, and it grows to like 6,000 in a day or something. No, most people have a lot of emails that they got to work through, right? But if that number gets significantly bigger, then it is, maybe an indication for some people that something's going on. Okay. Here's the other thing. For most things, there is an opposite. So I'm going to say this for the email. What if I am obsessively trimming my emails down to where I really do have like whenever I open it, there's 10 to 20 and I take care of them every day. And I run a zero balance with my emails, and I'm doing it, let's say, and I don't usually do that. And I'm doing it to the detriment or the neglecting of other responsibilities around me. And that opens the door for healthy behaviors done in an unhealthy way. What if I tend to, be someone who works out or exercises or something, and I do it more and I neglect other things or other, sort of pleasurable behaviors, some of which might be even intoxicant use. If you enjoy a glass of wine, or if you have some type of healthy use, maybe medicinal use of marijuana or cannabis or whatever it is. And all of a sudden you're doing more of those things than you were before. So you might have noticed already that one of the main things for a barometer for a rough patch or going through an episode of depression or anxiety or stress or burnout even. One of the elements to detect this is change. So more than what you're doing is if there is a dramatic change. When we look at, for example, criteria for depression, you can find that there's a great example is sleep or food. Okay, some people have insomnia symptoms when they're depressed. Some people have hypersomnia symptoms. So you're either not sleeping or, sleeping way more than you usually do. Either one of those could be a symptom because it's a change. Food, same thing. Some people eat their feelings. Some people don't eat when they're in their feelings. And it's different. It's different for different people. So how do you do this? Well, there's a couple different ways. One is to just kind of monitor what do you usually do in your day-to-day life? Do you have a good handle on how you spend your day? That can be good for other emotional mental health reasons. We can maybe do an episode about that sometime, but having a little bit of journaling, like make a food journal for a week or so, or, look at how much physical activity you get or how much you sleep or those kinds of things, just in a normal, everything's fine. And you're not doing this in order to change it. If you come across anything, I guess change it or, whatever. I mean, that's a whole nother thing having to do with goals and such. But for this purpose, what we're doing is we're just looking for what is the norm that I usually do. Anyway, those both ended in B, apparently. So when I'm looking for the norm of how I usually act, that helps me to notice when I depart from it, even if I'm starting to depart from it. And then I can stop and ask, what happened? Well, I didn't, get my usual amount of sleep the last 2 or 3 days. Is there a reason, an external type of reason, or some reason that I just, that I can explain that doesn't seem to do with my emotional health? Or am I starting to have some hard times? Am I wanting to stay up so that I can avoid, being around people, or because I don't want the next day to come or something like that? And is it different? And here's the key. Is that different? If it's the same and it's not healthy, of course, we should still work on it. But once again, goals. But if there's a big change, that is something to be aware of. The other way to detect if we've had a big change is to ask those in our intimate circle. Do they notice anything when we're having a hard time that we do more than usual? And they may or may not be right. They're an observer of us. We're the expert of us, I guess. But it is helpful. Any good expert will take observer information as data. And to look at that and say, are there people, do they notice? Do my children or my partner or just close coworkers or friends or anybody, do they notice, hey, when I'm having a hard time, can you tell? And how can you tell? If someone asks you, you doing okay? As someone who knows you real well, you might want to say, answer is honest, you answer honestly, but then say, what was it that made you think that? I'd love to know, because I want to know what I'm demonstrating, what I'm showing through the actions that are coming out. Internal is a little more tricky. Internal changes and barometers could have to do with what kind of self-dialogue am I having? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it hopeful? Is it, pessimistic? Whatever. What am I saying to myself? Am I saying I'm going to blow it? Or am I saying, I'm going to blow it up, son? Crush it. Okay. That's a little reference to Schmidt from New Row. Anyway, or maybe I'm doing that, which I just mentioned, which is overcompensating or engaging in grandiose thoughts or something like that. So internal is a little harder because no one else can see it. And also it sneaks up on us because it usually seems normal. So this is where having a dialogue, either with a therapist or with our loved ones or both, but with ourselves also, and saying, how do I usually think and feel on a normal, typical day? What do I usually walk around saying to myself, thinking, reacting? What are my internal processes? This is a thing that oftentimes in therapy, when someone is asked this, the first thought we have is, Anyway, we go, in our head because we're not sure. That's the noise of the emotion of being unsure, because we have to think about it usually before we really do that. We usually just go on with our day because we need to, and we just try to, get things done. So there's a couple of ideas of how you can sort of look at your day-to-day behavior and thoughts and watch for big changes. Big changes are always a reason to stop and ask ourselves why, what's going on. And if we get to know the barometers for our emotional health and our mental well-being and basically, how our mental hygiene is going, it can tip us off in time sometimes to actually do something about it so it doesn't get quite so bad. And this is an interesting thing where there's just one of those unfairnesses of life that some of us have to do it much more than others. Some of us, our own knowledge of barometers and trips. I mean, for example, people like me who have bipolar disorder, people who've had strong depressive episodes, or people who have even things like just ADHD, or if you tend to think differently than other people, and that, can affect you based off of the things that happen, or, due dates passing, or people being mad, that kind of thing. Just basically being aware. And those of us, any of us who've had pretty severe or serious mental health episodes in our lives, it really, really is important. That's one of the reasons why we might be a little more rigid about something here and there. Getting enough sleep, for example. Hey, I'm going home at this time. Doesn't really matter if anybody else is going home from whatever event or anything. I just am. I have to do this if I'm getting up at this time because I need X number, and that is my healthy thing. People who either stay away from places that have intoxicants, or have some fairly rigid way of keeping themselves out of trouble with a history of addiction, those kinds of things. So when you find someone that has that kind of rigidity, oftentimes, funny enough, the second one I mentioned, a lot of times people accommodate, not always. The first one, though, people are like, gosh, what a buzzkill you are, right? So being aware of that from other people too, if they have some of those boundaries. But anyway, the unfairness is that that's not really up to us. It's those who have those issues that do. Now, the other side of the unfairness is actually those that haven't had to struggle with serious mental health symptoms, even if they've had small ones or none at all. They run the risk of not knowing and not needing, air quote, needing to know what their barometers are. Because of that, they can easily fall into just kind of getting into a mediocrely miserable, just kind of a blah place. And that can sneak up on them and last a long time because they just think it's normal, or they're not used to monitoring and figuring that I can do something about this, or maybe I need to. And so, as I often say, we tend to focus on huge consequences as the things to avoid. Can I hold down a job, stay in a relationship? Can I avoid suicidal or self-harming ideation and actions? But the most common thing that happens with our mental health all across the spectrum of seriousness is that it can put at risk or damage in an ongoing way our quality of life, and how much do we enjoy, appreciate, or feel empowered in our own lives. And those things are not only, it's not that they're worse than those other things I mentioned, but they are more prevalent, and people can survive longer with that type of misery. And so that's the reasons why it's good for us to kind of watch for that. One quick note is you can also, of course, look for that in other people that you know. You can't read their mind, obviously, so be thoughtful in how you ask. But if you have someone in your life you're close enough to and you know their barometers, maybe they've even shared them with you because they know them, and you see them and you know them and love them and have that kind of relationship where you can say, hey, I noticed this is coming up. You've mentioned this, or you have this, sometimes this is when you're having a hard time. Are you having a hard time? And if so, can I help? That's the good, by the way to do it. If it's like, hey, I've noticed that you haven't been following through on this healthy behavior. What's wrong with you? We want to stay away from that tone. Okay. That could be a whole nother thing on giving help to other people. But for now, we're just talking about barometers, aren't we? Hey, guess what else we're talking about? I want to give a quick shout out to Grand View for Good. Go to grandviewforgood.org to learn more about this wonderful nonprofit started by a colleague of mine, Holly Willard, who's a clinical social worker put together and a therapist who's put together a great board of directors for this new charity that is focused on helping those who do not have access to mental health care to find that access and to be able to pay for it, as well as advocating in the community for more mental health advocacy and education, particularly for young people as well. They're just doing some exciting things. And so to learn more about them, go to grandviewforgood.org. You can also go to dwighthurst.com/support or go to patreon.com/brokenbrain to support The Broken Brain. And if you do so, 50% of your donation every single month will go to Grand View for Good. And we change charities each month, but whichever one is the charity of focus in the month that you join, 50% of your donation will continue to go to that. Quick note on the Patreon, you do get bonus episodes and things. I've been putting up videos, had a lot of interviews lately and had a little backlog. So I've been putting up videos of each interview. And so anybody at any level of donation, from the small to the tall, we're singing without any presents. No, but they did get presents because I have been uploading those things as well. So you get video of each interview that has that, and also you get the weekly history episodes and some other fun things like our podcast within a podcast review of the Anne of Green Gables reboot, Anne with an E, and how they use mental health and trauma, particularly in that series. Lots of, several other things that are in the pike. Pike? In the pipe. They're in the pipe, on the pike. You know what? We're just doing both pipes and pikes, which is a pretty good title for a podcast. If anybody wants to use that, Pipes and Pikes, go for it. It's probably a show about smoking while you're watching that big fish try to eat Arthur in The Sword and the Stone magazine, because that's the only media that comes to mind with a pike in it. Call in now to let me know if you know of other fictional sources or other pop cultural sources with pikes. Oh, one quick thing. If you do want to subscribe through the Patreon, you want to do it probably through patreon.com. You can do it through Apple. If you do so, you will end up paying a little more, and that little more does not go anywhere. It doesn't go to the charity because it doesn't come to me. That goes to Apple. So Apple has created itself as a middleman for Patreon, but you can still subscribe straight through the Patreon. And then you're paying, I think, a little, you're paying the whole amount that just goes to the show. So it won't increase any money that comes to the show or to the charities if you do it through the more expensive option, is my understanding. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back with you again tomorrow for a regular interview, and we'll have several new ones that I'm scheduling right now. I haven't picked one for tomorrow yet, but you're going to love it because they're good. They're all good. And so are you. Have a great week. Bye.